we want to get into something that affects many relationships. And sometimes we don't even know about it. Unresolved issues, unresolved anger, resentment that is building up, and it ends up affecting the relationship. Sometimes you have unresolved issues, even from way back, and you don't even recognize it. And so you spew your anger on the wrong person. How do we deal with those issues? In studio today, I've got an amazing couple. This is Mr. and Mrs. Wendy and Ngomma. And both of them have a passion for marriage and relationship coaching, and that's why they're here today. Buenas Fiwe.
Amen.
How are you doing?
We are well, we thank God.
Karibu
Happy to
sana.
be here, and thank you for hosting us.
Awesome. How are you doing?
I am fine.
Karibu.
Thank you so much.
Leo nyinyi ndio madaktari kwa hii clinic.
Tutatengeneza.
I'm curious, how does one even begin to know that they may be dealing with unresolved anger in them?
Sometimes I think it might not be noticed by you as an individual, but the people surrounding you would really tell.
Okay.
This is because sometimes you tend to exhibit that on somebody who maybe is innocent, because you're carrying on some baggage from, like you said, way from the past.
Yeah.
And these are issues that maybe happened in your childhood, in your youthful life, and you find yourself, you're not being able to express them to the immediate person, because maybe they passed on, maybe they're no longer there with you. But then there is this person who ends up being more or less your punching bag. And these are the people you want to release it to. A case scenario, somebody had a bad day at work, comes home to innocent kids, beats them.
Hey.
The problem is not the kids in actual sense.
Yes.
The problem is what they've carried. But then they found an easier landing, and that's where they're expressing this thing from. So it's from the onset, you might not really notice it.
Yeah.
But if the people around you can be able to tell you, sometimes you live in denial because you're like,
Yeah.
Mimi niko sawa, what are you telling me? But a critical analysis and even sharing would really help out in knowing that, yes, I have some issues.
Okay.
Yes.
Does personality play out in this?
I think it does. Because our temperaments determine how we behave most of the time.
Yeah.
So I think personality can really contribute to how you behave and how much you will even carry a burden for so long, or how easy it is for you to release it. So I believe it would.
When guys are dating, you know, preparing for marriage and all that, is it possible to begin to see some of these things? And if you see some of these tendencies, what are you supposed to do? Because sometimes in that realm of love is in the air.
Yeah.
You know, you ignore a lot of things.
Absolutely. Times and again, when people are dating, you tend to see the good things.
Yes.
And that really overshadows the bad things. However, if you're a keen person, it's always good to really ask it from the onset. Are you really, what is your childhood background? How did you grow up? You know, are there issues? And also try and trigger the questioning, you know. If this happens, how would you deal with this? You know, if this happens, how would you deal with this? So sometimes dating can really overshadow it, but it's important to be very critical. Ask the hard questions, which I think most of us don't really ask. And you're now in a commitment. These things are now being exhibited. You want to really safeguard the marriage union because you don't really want to come out of it.
Yeah.
And therefore, what would have really been sorted from the onset was not really sorted. So the red flags can be there. And it's important for you to ask the hard questions.
I like what you're saying about talking about your history, how you grew up. You know, what kind of challenges did you face? What kind of experiences did you have at home? Because then that begins to paint a picture of why you are the way that you are, why you react to things the way you react.
Yeah.
But I find that most people don't, they just talk about your eyes, your hair.
Yeah,
know?
and that's where the problem is. Because you're supposed to be very intentional while you're dating, especially if you know that you're really intending to get into a marriage setup with this person. You're supposed to ask the hard questions, like he's saying.
Yeah.
It's not just about going out and having coffee. You're supposed to have very serious and intimate conversations about your life.
Yeah.
right from where you came from to where you are right now and where you're seeing yourself in the future. So I believe that that's where the mistake really comes in most relationships, and that should be corrected, because you're supposed to be very intentional when you're having your conversations. You really know this person well and deep enough, right from where they came from, where they are and where they're going.
There are people who've been through a lot of traumatizing events growing up.
Yeah.
And what they want to do is forget and just move on, not recognizing that the trauma they went through is affecting their present-day relationships.
Yeah.
So for somebody like that, where do they even begin to find help if they're not even willing to go back and retrace their steps?
I think one of the things you need to tell yourself is covering it is bringing more problem. You know, because you're dealing with issue A. You've not sorted it, you've covered it.
Yeah.
It will end up spilling over to raising issue B, C, D, and even to the point of Z. Because let's say you had an abusive growing up.
Yeah.
You don't want to talk about it. You don't want to solve it. You've come to a marriage. You now want to exhibit it. So you exhibit it to your partner and your children. They leave. So you have now a marriage, an issue in the past, and children who might live a traumatic life of a father or a mother who's been beating them.
Yeah.
So it's important that take time and always deal with the baggages before you even commit. Yes, it's very much advisable. Deal with the baggages, because if you don't deal with them, there will always be those triggers. Sometimes you'll see something that will remind you of that past, and you'll now react on a defensive mode. Because you will want to really cover what you went through. And therefore, if it was an abusive father, you'll want to maybe raise a voice for you not to be abused, like maybe your mother was abused. And that will leave another space of a quote-unquote disrespect in a marriage, because maybe your partner doesn't really know that this is what you're trying to use as a defense mechanism. So it's advisable. The baggages of the past, harmful as they are, deal with them, because again, case scenario, if you get married at 25, God gives you an abundance of years to 70. You're living longer. So this thing, if you don't deal with it, you're going to deal with it longer than normal. So deal with the baggages first. Yes, and that's why we advise so much of openness in counseling and therapies, because these ones would go a long way in helping you walk that journey. And also avoiding the act of, this is most important, mostly in men, acting all perfect. I don't want to act weak. So I'll cover it because I want to be the ideal African man who doesn't have issues, who's always good. And that you'll experience burnout at some point. Because cover up can only come at a certain level.
Very true.
You know?
Very true. What about those of us who say, kwetu tunakuwaga na hasira? There are certain people who have embraced, you know, and you say, me, I'm just hot-tempered. That's just the way I am.
That's just
me, kwetu tunakuwaga na hasira. Kwetu ukitukosea.
Kwanza kabila yetu.
Don't joke. Don't go there. So how do you deal with that? Because it's also a belief system that we have carried.
Yeah, I think during premarital counseling, we were being taught about our personalities and our temperaments. And one thing that really stood out for me is that in every personality, there are strengths and weaknesses.
Very true.
But your weaknesses are not supposed to be your excuse to always be that way, especially in marriage, when you come in with that mentality, this is just how I am, I can never change, I was created like this. You're supposed to surrender for God to help you and work on you, so that those weaknesses, he will be able to help you through them. Don't just sit there and assume that this is just how I am and I'm never going to change. Try to work on yourself, and as you work on yourself, one thing I know is that God will always help us with our weaknesses. So running to God for him to assist you where you're weak is the best way to actually get through it. And the strengths, you try to work to maximize on them mostly, but your weaknesses, surrender to God for him to help you and work on you.
Okay. She's talked about working on yourself. What's the place of self-awareness in this conversation?
You know, anytime people have come into the space of dating, one of the biggest mistakes we look for that other person.
Yeah, we always look at the other person.
But have you ever sat down and asked yourself?
That's why we have a list.
Yes. Have you ever asked yourself, would I ordinarily marry me?
Hey, stop going there.
because because that will help you
Yes.
understand the faults and now start the space of self-examination. You know, would I ordinarily marry a person who believes that kwetu tunakuwaga na hasira? Because that will help you now work on yourself. Because marriages don't come to complete you, they complement you.
Will it, selector? Will it one more time?
For avoidance
Say
of doubt.
That is a very important statement
Yeah.
you've made. Ebu sema tena?
Marriage does not complete you.
Yes.
It complements you. So you have to work on yourself, the fullness of James, before you come into this marriage.
Yeah.
You know, usithemange mimi niko na hasira natafuta mtu wa kunituliza hasira. No. Because you might end up getting a fellow who's also looking for
I'm telling you.
hasira.
Yes.
So it's important. First, ask yourself the hard question. Would I? You know, I am not this person who wants to do this routine. Would I ordinarily marry myself? Or a person who's exhibiting the same characters? Because that will help you get rid of the wrongs. Because most of the times you're like, me, as long as niko na dema metulia, niko na bwana providing,
Yes.
I'm good to go.
Sawa.
You know? So it's important. Ask that. Would I? And then that self-examination would help you really get to see the red flags that over the years you've been very unconscious. Because it's like now looking back and you're like, okay, I left this, so I can be able to sort it before I actually step forward.
Okay.
Yes.
Sometimes the unresolved anger is not necessarily from previous relationships. It's from this relationship.
Yeah.
Because a good number of couples don't know how to deal with conflict. And so vitu zinawekwa tu chini ya carpet.
Yeah.
Ingia kwa sitting room unapata na hii mlima amuionangi. They keep just stashing things in
a
there.
whole pile.
So what can you tell us about conflict resolution? What are some key things people need to understand in a marriage setting about conflict resolution?
Well, one thing I'd say is, first of all, it's very unhealthy to just sweep things under the carpet. Because one day it's going to pile up and it's going to blow up on both of you.
Yes.
So the advisable thing to do is when an issue arises, just sit down and talk about it, solve it. Don't try to move on and assume that it's okay even when it's not okay. Like we got married, I saw this was not going the right way. I just decided to keep quiet because I didn't want to raise issues. I am too tired to fight right now. So I will not raise it. Then tomorrow I see something else that happens. And again, it offends me. And I decide I am not ready to fight right now. I'm too tired. I am from work. I will not talk about it. And then now over time, these things are piling up and it's going to blow on both of us. Because the day we are going to now start talking about it, we will start unpacking so many things that happened even in the past that we didn't talk about. And it's going to be so hurtful even to now move on past that, because you've already created a picture of this bad person. Because this bad person is never given a chance to explain themselves. You don't know why they behaved like that. You just assumed and you decided to move on. But now you've created a picture of this bad person who always does this to me, does this to me, does this to me. And at the end of the day, you're just bringing a distance in your relationship that you might really take a long time before you actually bring yourselves close together, because already you know this person hurts me so much. And they never explain why they do that, because you never give them a chance to explain. So it's very important to bring issues on the table, discuss the elephants in the room. Don't just leave tension in the house and just sleep it off and wake up the next day. Just make it a habit of always bringing issues on the table so that you can talk about them. It's very healthy.
Okay. What does it do to a relationship, a marriage relationship, when one has resentment towards their spouse? It's just building up on the inside.
Well, I think I would ordinarily take it from a point of scenario where you have this little litter, you've covered it under the carpet. Tomorrow another pile. Tomorrow you realize that pile will keep heaping up. And therefore, if it heaps up, if this other person was on this end, so what comes in here is what we call a rift. And the rift will now start psychologically, move sexually, spiritually, because ordinarily when mmekosana hata kuomba mwezi omba pamoja. So it goes that way. It now becomes even physical, because it's evident, you know, mimi nalalanga huku, yeye analala huku. The last niliongea na yeye hata sijui ni lini, sijui ama hata alikuja. That's why it starts. So the resentment thing is more of an investment of trash that will keep heaping up to become a dump site of unresolved issues that will now start exhibiting or removing that bad odor that will keep people out of the space.
Yeah.
So within no time, unasikia amekwambia mimi weekend inaenda nyumbani. Ama hata asemi unajua hayuko alienda nyumbani. Because they're now looking for a healthy space that is not exhibiting this dirt. So the distance is one of the things that you realize. What was once united now becomes very, very distant.
Yes.
Physically, psychologically, emotionally, and in all other facets. Yes.
How do you deal with those issues that you find hard to forgive? Because maybe the resentment is coming because your spouse did something that is unthinkable. You're thinking like, how could they? Of all the things in the world to do, you just chose to do that one. Na umeokoka. Unasemanga Yesu ni Bwana. And so it becomes hard to forgive because of that specific thing. How do you navigate through that?
I think first of all, one of the reasons that we might struggle to really forgive our partners is when we had such high expectations on them.
Yes.
We took them and we looked at them as if they are God. They will never hurt me. This person loves me so much, I cannot imagine them hurting me. And so you had such high expectations on them, such that when they expressed their shortcomings, you were so broken and you could not even imagine yourself even coming to terms to forgive them. So I believe, first of all, you should work on your expectations on a fellow human being. Understand that they are a human being and they can hurt you, not because they are bad people, but because things happen and we have our own weaknesses. So when you understand that this is something that can actually happen, you will not have such high expectations on them. And when they actually fail you, you're going to have a space in your heart to forgive them. But sometimes it's just hard. Maybe even if you didn't have those high expectations, you really would not have wanted that to be done on you. And that's why I will still take you back to God, who is the master of forgiving. The only one who knows how to forgive best. Just go back to him and tell him, Lord, my husband has really hurt me and I can't get myself to forgive him. Help me. Help me, because the Holy Spirit is there to help us with our weaknesses. When we are struggling to do these things, he knows. He knows what it means to be hurt and bruised by people, and he still forgives. So go back to God and ask him to help you. Even as you try to work around accepting that these people are bound to have shortcomings and they are bound to hurt you in one way or another, intentionally and not intentionally. But when it happens, I will try to bring myself to forgive them. And when it is too hard, I will run to the one who knows how to forgive best to teach me how to forgive them. Because there is no way you will continue in a marriage when you don't know how to forgive. I remember, again, in our premarital classes, the first thing we're told is, welcome to marriage, the school of forgiveness. Because that is where you're taught how to forgive again and again and again. So run to God to help you to forgive when you really struggle.
On the whole issue of resentment, sometimes you feel like because your spouse has got such high expectations of you, kuna mahali amekuweka. And so sometimes when you make a mistake, sometimes when you go on the wrong path, you're so afraid to be honest. Because if I am honest, they will resent me. Because amenieka hapa. Na hii mistake ni ya huku chini. So how do you deal with that?
That is more of what you'd call a knee-jerk reaction, because that will not last. At the tail end of the day,
we hold on to it as much as we can.
For as long as you can.
The worst statement that ever happens is when they tell you, sasa na mbona hukuniambia?
Sijui nilikuwa naogopa utabia vile unabehave.
Sasa juu umesema, what has it changed? So the first thing, I think, one of the things that people have failed in doing, and especially in relationships, is openness in a point of mistake. You know, they would react painfully because they're human, because you've gone wrong. But they would react lesser painful, in a lesser magnitude compared to when you did not raise it.
But what happens when sometimes you're open, and then you know the way in the movies when the police catch you and they say anything you say and do can and will be used against you. Sometimes that happens in a marriage.
Yes, it does.
Where you open up to your spouse, and then the next time you have a heated argument, the very thing you opened up to them about becomes ammunition to tear you down. And so next time, You become wiser. You just kneel by mouth.
But again, you still go back to the bigger question.
Yes.
If they come and learn about it, do you expect them to deal with it in a better way? Again, admittal is the quickest route to resolving any issue.
True.
So the very first route is admit. It doesn't matter how they're going to react. At least they'll have known one thing, that there is a space that you've put for them to understand that, you know what, he still values me, she still values me
Yes.
much as he went off on this one. So it's important. Admit. Don't be afraid of the repercussions.
Yes.
Because either way, it has happened, you'll have to deal with it
Yes.
at one given point. And also, always flip the coin and ask yourself, how would you wish to be handled in an event such a thing happens? You know? Because sometimes we deal with marriage issues or relationship issues from the point of me,
Yeah.
not putting in consideration the other person. So the very first you need to rush is remove yourself from the situation, put that person there, and now start asking yourself those hard questions. Would I wish ordinarily not to be told this?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. You're talking about unresolved anger and resentment in marriage, in relationships, how to deal with it. We have an amazing couple in studio with us. This is Mbogwa and Wendy Maingi. If you have any questions for them, or maybe you know them and you want to say hi, please feel free to do so on our SMS line 20316 for SMS, WhatsApp 0786 316 316. I think this is a question for you, Mbogwa. Have you ever been angry with her and you still want to compliment her and tell her you love her? What was the expression on your face?
Well, I think it's the hardest. It has happened. Because you're like, this has happened, and at the heat of the moment, we're
Yes.
like, I ought to tell her this. Like, even as a simple space of, we ought to pray. Rather, the food is ready. You know, these are the things that you cannot be able to be like, food is ready. You know? So, it has ever happened. And it's not easy. And the facial expression is as calm as it can get.
Sasa hiyo ndio unavaa mask.
Are you
Unavaa
sure?
mask. Sema niko na kahoma, unavaa mask.
Like, thank you, I love you.
Because I can still feel the coldness.
Yes, it's called love.
It's cold love.
Before long, the next question is, do you really mean it?
Ayun.
Yes, I do. You know? So it happens. It happens.
It happens.
Yes.
Mary is asking a question. What do you do if your partner does not want to talk about those issues? If you bring them up, they become agitated as a way of brushing off the issues. What do you do?
I think you need to be patient with them because you're the one who knows who you have in your house. You know them. You know them better than anyone else. So if they are struggling to open up about these issues, you can try to be patient with them. But of course, you can only be patient for too long. So also try to encourage them oftenly to open up. You cannot use force to get somebody to open up.
True.
That's one thing that will not work.
True.
So you can only try to be very patient and try to encourage them constantly. And if it takes so long, maybe you can involve a third party, somebody who you know that they respect and they will listen to, and try to get them to open up about these issues.
Okay.
So it's a process, but you need to know your partner well so that you know how to deal with something like that.
Could timing also be an issue?
Yes. I think just to add up into this question, the other day we posted this and somebody said that when their partner is mad, what they do, they now move to doing chores.
Yeah.
Anapika, anaosha nyumba. So you don't have even the point to even ask the question. They were wrong, but now they're covering it with some goods.
That's the man.
Yes. You know, he cooks.
The man.
Yes, so the man is cooking, the man takes care of the kids.
Well,
So as the wife, you're like, if I raise an issue, nitaonekana very ungrateful soul. But but just to echo what she said, time. Sometimes when we want to solve issues, we end up raising more issues.
Yeah.
Because maybe you're now playing all defensive psychologically, so you're yelling and all. So the timing, take time. Sometimes you look at what you are fighting over later on and you're like, it was too petty.
Yeah.
Surely.
So time is the healer of all things. So take time. If you're the one who is psychologically calm and okay, at least give the other person time to really calm down. But don't ignore solving it. Because now the problem is, unaangaliaga sasa 2-3 days later, should I raise it? Raise it for posterity. Raise it for the betterment of the relationship. Because if you don't, it will come back again.
Yeah.
And do not know how you felt. Yes.
And when it comes back again, it comes back with 7, worse, more fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like,
Worse
whoa.
than 8. But also on the issue of timing, I think we can learn a lesson from children. You know, when you begin to have children are very good students. They know that one. Don't even talk to mommy right now. I'll tell you what. They know when to, especially when they're asking for something.
Yeah.
They know.
Sure.
Yeah. When we are in high spirits. So even in a relationship, sometimes some things you just hold on to them. We'll discuss it, not now. And when both of you, you know, you're at peace, your hearts are settled,
Yeah.
Sure.
then you can talk about it. Because at that time, you're more objective.
Very.
It doesn't seem like you're being attacked.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem
True.
like, you know. So I think all those things are important. There's a question here. How following this show from Kisumu, how do you handle religious denomination? A woman goes to church every Sunday and the man goes to church on Sunday. Do you feel there's unity here? Please assist.
Wow.
Hiyo ndio tunasemaga will it selector before the wedding to the premarital.
Yeah.
Because these are things people ignore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you see, I think in an African setup, most cases happens that when you get married, the lady tends to move to the man's church. That is one route. The other route is, during your dating and courting period, can you assess where you people are individually serving?
Yeah.
Because it's not even about the man's church. It's how sane is the doctrine.
Exactly.
It's the upbringing of the children. So it's important to put all these factors. And also, don't act and live like you're in a cultic space where you have no room to raise the issues.
Yeah.
Because I'm not comfortable with this. I find it hard to believe on this because growing up, this is what I've learned in my journey of faith. So during your courting, during your dating,
Talk
raise
about
these
those
issues.
things.
If you're now in a setup of marriage, be very open to talk about it.
Yeah.
Because at the tail end of the day, before long, the kids will be here. You don't want to subject kids to 2 Sundays,
Wataenda Saturday, wataenda Sunday.
Sunday.
Wataenda zote.
You know?
Na wafanye homework.
No, fanye
Wafanye
na CBC kwanza is quite a show.
And they become teenagers, they decide them they want to go to another church.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So help them. And this is entirely a burden on the man. Because you're a priest. Now be very critical and open to ask yourself, wherever I've been serving, because maybe it's a family church, maybe it's your ancestral church, this is where we've been like, case scenario for us, we've been Presbyterians from way back. Is it really healthy for us? And the Sunday school ministry, the youth ministry, is my wife even having a good space to serve in this space?
Yeah.
Because you don't again want to have somebody's daughter who was very active in their previous church. Now you bring them to a church that they're not comfortable. And you've, first of all, killed their space to serve their maker.
Yeah.
Because of what you want to push for. So these are things that ought to be talked about.
Yeah, I usually say, I tell couples who are planning to get married, what are your non-negotiables? You need to have non-negotiables because many times we assume once we get married, some things will change.
Yeah.
What if they never change?
Yeah.
Yeah. What are the things you don't agree on? What if they never change? Are you still okay being in this relationship? Because once you cross over into marriage, my friend, so matters religion. I even tell young people who are planning to get married, okay, both of you are born again. What does born again mean to you? What does born again mean to you?
Yeah.
Because it may be different things.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
true.
Yeah. You come from another church, you come from another church. Have you decided where you're going? Na unavuka huku ama mnatafuta mahali pengine? Because those things may seem trivial at that time, but once you get married, those are the important things. There's another question here. Hi, Pasi, this has almost completely extinguished the fire for us. Between us, it's colder than a winter night in Moscow. Oh my goodness. My concern is, how do I tactfully protect the children so that it's not a vicious cycle? Because confronting it, however tactfully, always makes it worse. Whatever I say can and definitely will be used against me in future.
I feel her because most of the time, rather, I bet it's a lady, rather a gent. One of the problems we've always had is we've had partners who are gaslighters. You know, they are wrong.
Yes.
They don't want to admit.
They don't want to, yeah.
So what they do is that they flip it for you. You know, you're the victim, but at the tail end of the day, they'll be like, I'm the victim.
You will apologize to them.
You'll have to apologize from nowhere. So the key point is, like, she's raised it. The place of children is very integral. Because some of these things tend to really affect them, even at a very tender age.
Yeah.
And fast forward, they now have to grow playing the mother, the way the mother played. If the mother was yelling because the father was abusive, they will now live knowing that this is the way to go.
Yeah.
So always try and create a safe space to resolving your conflicts. If it's a walk, we know that as a family, when there is an issue, we walk.
Yes.
But our children, in their space, which is their home, they don't see this happening. So it's always good to try and that. However tactful that thing has been raised, sometimes you can only fight for it for too long. So this person who's always dodging the issue can only dodge it for too long.
Yeah.
You know, because it's like, this is what happened last time. This is what happened last time. So engage a third party, like she said, equally. And bring in this person, not because you want to expose your partner, but because you want somebody who will bring together you people together.
Yeah.
And I think this has always been a problem for people who maybe your best couples are not really there for you. Or maybe you had a come with stay marriage, so in that sense you don't have an accountability couple.
Yeah.
But I would advise, whether you got married through the church setup or the come we stay, it's important to have an accountability couple. People who work with you, people who help you resolve your issues.
Yeah.
You know, because that way the tactiveness of dodging these things will be sorted.
I'm curious, Wendy, when we talk about unresolved anger and resentment, what impact does this have on an individual's mental health?
It definitely has a great impact on someone's mental health because these issues, when they pile up, and they really affect you mentally. And nowadays you have so many mental illnesses that we are getting to learn about that we didn't even know in the past.
Yes.
Anxiety and depression and so many other things. So it's very important to be mindful of your partner's mental health and to also take care of your own mental health. If you see that an issue is really overwhelming you and you need a break, just talk it out and figure out whether do we need a break, do we need to talk to somebody, do we need to see a professional, a counselor, but above everything else, make sure that you're minding your partner's mental health and your own mental health, because some issues will really be overwhelming.
Yes.
They've been happening for so long that you reach a point and you can't take it anymore. Be very careful. If you need to just let that issue rest for a while so that you people can catch a break and try to focus on other things, if you need to go out on a vacation and try to relax and breathe, it's very important for you to be mindful of your mental health. Yeah.
I love what you've said about seeking professional help, because I think more and more we are becoming aware of how important that is.
Yeah.
Back in the day, seeking professional help had some sort of stigma associated with it, especially if it's mental health issues. So I like that. What about rebuilding trust? Rebuilding trust, repairing this relationship, especially if the anger and resentment is coming from not Ngomma, it's this relationship and how you've been living your life. Like now, the message that came, the resentment is already there, the anger is already there. So if a couple like this comes to the realization, they come back to their senses like the prodigal son, and they realize we need to fight for this marriage. How do they move forward?
One, always endeavor as a partner to not live on a repetitive mode. One of the things that kills trust is, I forgave you last week.
Yeah.
You repeated.
Yeah.
Last week.
I forgave you last night. 24 hours that haijaisha na umerudia. So always be that conscious. Some of these things have the tendency of repetition because of ignorance. So always avoid that space of ignorance. Again, also as the other person, don't use those things as your hidden missiles in an event at tunapatana, because every other given time you'll always keep it here close. On January 2010 you did this, saa 8 usiku nikakusamehe mimi, so don't use them. don't. And also, there's one thing that we've learned in our marriage. It is us against the issue.
Exactly.
Us against the issue.
It's not you against each other.
Yes. You know, if it was an issue about money, I would not ordinarily wake up and be like, hujui kutunza pesa. Hujui mimi ndio najua kuzipanga. No, this is our money. This is where we are going wrong.
Yeah.
So play on the same side of the court. That will help you build the trust. Also, be each other's accountability partners by to some extent. That I will work with Wendy because I know Wendy has a struggle in this. I will not be one to fight Wendy because of this that she's going through. I will work with Joseph because this is an issue that he has an issue with. You know, because you will now be able to look at it from a point of investment. And the very minute you invest on something, you have hope and trust in it that it will change someday. Yes.
Anything to add to that?
Also, in rebuilding trust, you also need to understand that sometimes it's a process. Maybe that person was very hurt and they might not really be okay the next morning.
Definitely.
So be patient with them, even as you try to work on yourself so that you get there quickly enough. But be patient with each other. It's a process.
It's a process. Okay. As we finish, what would your parting shot be?
My parting shot will be... Don't cover up these issues. Whenever they arise, just make sure you're addressing them. Make sure you're doing it in the most healthy way possible. Make sure you're mindful of each other when you're doing this, so that even as you raise them, you apply wisdom, that this is the time to raise them, not when I am so angry and I will end up adding oil into the fire and things will start escalating. Try to seek wisdom to know how to handle these issues. And most importantly, at the feet of Jesus, that is where we'll learn how to deal with these things. So seek the Lord and He is going to guide you.
Awesome. Parting shot.
Oh, great. One parting shot I would use is what we currently having. Try and also have some conflict resolution rules.
Exactly.
Have rules.
Yes.
That, yes, umejam, but this, you don't do this here.
You don't do this, yes.
You don't do this here. You don't do this here. Because that way you'll be able to narrow down issues. The reason as to why conflicts are not resolved is because you don't even have the parameters. How far can you go?
Yeah.
You know, a small issue of sugar brings in other issues. So
sugar is not a small thing nowadays. Imepanda bei.
Unamgonga na
Sugar imepanda bei.
Sugar. So have rules.
Yeah.
And also, like she said, understand that we are journeying.
Yeah.
Marriage is a growth. It's a space you grow. So have the patience to grow with that person. Some things that we were dealing with on our first day in marriage, we no longer have them as issues today.
Because you've grown.
We've grown. So understand and have the space for growth. And above it, like she said it, pray and seek God. Because He knows best how to handle us. You know, submit to the potter's hand and He will be able to make you whole.
Wow.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Hey, asanteni sana.
Karibu sana.
karibu.
It's good to having you on the show today.
Thank you.